Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy. And now, here are your hosts, Josh Guesman and Wendy Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman. Joining me tonight is Miss Wendy Thomas. We have an unbelievably packed show. The show recording on July 27, 2017, just to give everybody a frame of reference when you're listening to this, because it's going to be a day that LA Galaxy fans remember for a very long time. Lots of news coming out. We have tons to talk about. We're going to get to your phone calls. We have press conference audio. We have so many things to get to, and I'm glad you could join us. I'm glad that you're here. It's going to be a fun time, and if we go a little bit longer, if we rock and roll for a little bit longer, if we do those types of things, you guys are going to hang in there with us, so I'm glad everybody's here. So let's before we get to any news, before spilling anything, because I know you guys already know exactly what's coming up, let's talk to Miss Wendy Thomas. Wendy, how's your day going?
It's going really well. How's your day, Josh?
I would appreciate it if the LA Galaxy would stop making news for about 10 minutes. I mean, I love them. I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that there was a whole, sort of, I don't know, almost like a news dump that came out today. But I could use a break for 10, 15 minutes. That would be nice.
It was not a slow news day. It was, I think, the Los Angeles Derby officially unleashed itself on MLS today.
Yeah, it very well could have. Let's get to some of the news, and we'll just sort of shuffle right through it here. The LA Galaxy this morning, again, Thursday, July 27th. I'm going to say it probably 3 or 4 times, so everybody sort of has this. If you're going to get a tattoo of a day in LA Galaxy history, maybe this is a day to sort of look. Just super busy. The LA Galaxy this morning fired LA Galaxy coach Curt Onalfo after a 6-10-4 overall record, a guy who was brought in after Bruce Arena left to the U.S. men's national team, a guy who was handpicked by Curt Onalfo and Pete Vianis as the successor to the club, the guy who was going to usher in the sort of new era of the LA Galaxy, relying on their academy, bringing in the young players, adding some top-notch international players and designated players as well, and have all the success that they possibly did. 6-10-4 overall, 5-4-1 on the road, the best road record in Major League Soccer, but let's flip it on its head because 1-6-3 at home, Wendy. The Curt Onalfo era is officially over.
And there's many people out there saying either hallelujah and or he was scapegoated and or, I still miss Bruce and or I'm excited about Sigi and or Sigi is simply recycling an era from 10 years ago. There's a lot of different reactions from people on the internet. But I think overall, the majority of LA Galaxy fans believe that it was the right thing to do to fire Curt Onalfo.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the things I actually wrote in my last game recap whenever they lost to New England. I said, if it doesn't happen, if things don't continue, if things continue this way, because it was about losing the team, I'm going to tell you right now, I think the reason they fired Curt Onalfo was because he lost the team and not because of results. And you can look at the results and they're bad. But ultimately for me, it's about whether or not you could recover from that. If you got people back from injuries, if you signed a designated player, which of course we will get to, if you do all these different things, that there was still a chance that, the LA Galaxy could still have a okay record, make it to the playoffs, do all the sorts of things. But I said, if, things didn't turn around against Seattle, the results were going to start adding up. And the fact that you're going to lose the team against Seattle was the biggest reason, and it happens. It happens on a Thursday, 2 days before the LA Galaxy are set to face the Seattle Sounders, and immediately, Wendy, as it happens, and we're going to touch on all corners of all this, in the same announcement, by the way, I got a call at about 8:10 a.m. this morning telling me that this had happened, all right, and that it was going to be news and all these other things. So I went and called the LA Galaxy. I got confirmation on it. My story went up. All these things have sort of happened, that the LA Galaxy hire former Seattle Sounders head coach, former Columbus Crew head coach, and former LA Galaxy head coach, Sigi Schmid. So Sigi Schmid joining the LA Galaxy again for his second tenure. Bruce is doing his rebound work with U.S. men's national team there, Wendy. So why not have Sigi do his work with the LA Galaxy?
There was a great tweet on Twitter from someone who said, "I just woke up from a 12-year nap. whoa, Bruce Arena's tearing it up with U.S. men's national team, and Sigi Schmid is coaching the LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a throwback. This is Throwback Thursday, and in a way, this is a huge throwback because Sigi Schmid, famous coach at UCLA, at the LA Galaxy, and for me, probably it's not so much of a surprise because having gone to every home game this season, and I sit in section 109, Sigi Schmid has been in my section or the section next to mine for every home game for the LA Galaxy this season. So I know that he was in Los Angeles and paying close attention to the LA Galaxy. But so the choice of coach is not so much of a surprise, although a lot of people were interested in Bob Bradley, but it looks like he's going to be going somewhere else.
90 minutes after the LA Galaxy officially announced Sigi Schmidt as the new LA Galaxy, or I guess, is he new LA Galaxy head coach? Yeah, he still is. New LA Galaxy head coach. LAFC announces that Bob Bradley will be their first ever coach. So the LA Derby officially playing against each other. You're going to have Sigi Schmidt possibly, and we'll get to some of that, facing off against Bob Bradley in what I still consider the first game of the season at StubHub Center. I still imagine that will be it. It'll be LA Galaxy hosting LAFC because their stadium won't be done. And so with those two things, that you might see Sigi Schmidt on one side and Bob Bradley on the other side. But Wendy, that's not all the news that was done because there's still more. I feel like I'm Oprah, but there's more. You get a coach and you get a coach.
You get a car.
Everybody gets one. You also had Jonathan Dos Santos officially being announced, an announcement that I thought would hold off until tomorrow and Friday because today was sort of about Sigi, but apparently it all got cleared up and everything was done enough that Jonathan Dos Santos was officially announced, even though most of us have known it was done. Basically right after the podcast on Monday night with Kevin Baxter, Wendy, we found out that Jonathan Dos Santos was coming to the LA Galaxy. So it was nice for us to be done recording and theorizing on possibly why Jonathan Dos Santos might be coming to the LA Galaxy, and then basically find out that it's done and that it was headed that way. So that's sort of where we stand right now. That is the news day that we have had, and we're going to go into detail of all of these things. And all of this, of course, is right in front of the LA Galaxy's game against the Seattle Sounders on Saturday. So a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about, Wendy, a bunch of things. I'm going to do something, though, that we haven't done in a very long time, which is go ahead and open up the phone lines for this entire show. So if you have a comment about, Sigi Schmidt, about Jonathan Dos Santos, about anything that has happened today, about Curt Onalfo or anything else, as long as you keep it PG, you're more than welcome to call in, and that number is 949-734-4217, 949-734-4217, and I will do my best to get people on the air, and sometimes I get busy and I don't see the screen off to my left where it's saying people are calling, so I'll try to pay attention to that. So, Wendy, here we go, back to Curt Onalfo. We've talked about it. It seemed like this is just the time they made that decision, and they even talked about it in the press conference audio, which I do have some of, so we will get to hear from Sigi Schmidt in the press conference audio. But Chris Klein was sort of asked why they made this decision, and everybody is trying to tie it to the Bob Bradley announcement for LAFC. What do you think, Wendy? Do you think that there is a connection between those two? And then I'll give you sort of what I think my view is.
Well, it does. The timing certainly does raise an eyebrow. It's hard but I think of it more from the perspective of LAFC, that we announced the signing of the termination of Curt Onalfo and Sigi Schmidt as being hired as the new head coach, and LAFC then scooped us, and then we scooped them with Jonathan Dos Santos. It's sort of like, I thought to myself, I was like, and so it begins. and so the rivalry is on. This is this unleashing. And with respect to the timing of the announcements, what I couldn't quite figure out is why Curt Onalfo was terminated now, because I understand we've been terrible for weeks and weeks and months. And I think that after thinking about it, I think you're probably right that it has to do with the fact that the team was gone, that he had lost every single person in the locker room. And because when you look at the Revs game from last week, there was just players who just were not making any effort whatsoever. I mean, they were checked out completely. Yeah. And I think at that point, if Giovanni Dos Santos is literally just not even going to watch the game, balls are just going to fly past him, and he's completely zoned out, then, his contract with the LA Galaxy is a lot longer than Curt Onalfo's, and he's a lot more expensive than Curt Onalfo. So it's ultimately, I do feel that in a way, Curt Onalfo has been scapegoated because, as we've discussed many times in the podcast, allocating liability or responsibility amongst Pete Vagenas, Chris Klein, and Curt Onalfo is very difficult. But when it's a question of things like who is comprised the roster and who the players are, who they bring in, things that are related to the FO, it feels like that Curt Onalfo is in a way being scapegoated for decisions that are ultimately responsible for the front office. I do not think that Curt Onalfo was a great coach. There's no particular reason why he should have been given the job based on his experience and qualifications and record, since he had a losing record with 2 prior teams in MLS. If the LA Galaxy wants to be the flagship of MLS, which, maybe it's a question of whether they even want that anymore. But if they do, then bringing in a coach with that record, is not announced to the world that is who you are. That being said, I don't know if he really was the major problem with the team, though, once you lose the team completely, there really is no other decision that you can make.
Yeah, and it sort of goes into that category, and that's sort of where I think I sit too. I don't think that all of this is Curt Onalfo's fault. I don't think all the results are Curt Onalfo's fault, although he certainly does catch some blame for some things. I almost wonder here, what sort of went into this, whether or not it was about, people trying to save their own jobs, and so you sort of fire the lowest man on the totem pole. In this particular case, it seems like it's Curt Onalfo. It's just one of those things. One, I feel bad for Curt Onalfo because, one, anytime any of this happens, and I know it's sports and people get fired, and, Sigi Schmid has been fired, Bruce Arena has been fired, all these guys you look at, they've all been fired before, so that's not necessarily, an issue. It's just that these are people, and I feel like Curt was undone or not treated fairly in a lot of ways with the roster he was given, the injuries that were sustained, and then the depth of the roster that he was given, not being able to compensate for those injuries. There were some tactical issues, there were some sub issues, and there's certainly a point where he doesn't seem like he was able to motivate the team, and that's enough for him to go, in my mind anyway. But it's interesting to see if Sigi Schmidt can come in here, whether or not Sigi has enough power and clout to be the guy over top of people like Pete Vagenas and Chris Klein, and to be able to get the guys he thinks he needs in order to improve this LA Galaxy team. Just some quick stats on Sigi Schmidt, because we're going to get to some calls who don't necessarily like this signing, Wendy, and I'd just like to go over who Sigi Schmidt is, just in case people don't know about him and they just want to raise some issues with the fact that he's a former Sounders coach. He was an LA Galaxy coach before that. He was a UCLA coach. He is a SoCal guy. He started coaching at UCLA in 1980. He led them to 322, 63, and 33 record. That's not a slouch. 3 NCAA championships, and eventually, after he was done with UCLA, came over, Wendy, and was the LA Galaxy coach from 1999 to 2004, going 79, 53, and 32. MLS Cup in 2002, a Supporters Shield in 2002, and he also was one of the few coaches to have a CONCACAF Champions Cup in 2000. That was that sort of off version of the CONCACAF Champions League that basically was almost Superliga, but not quite Superliga. And the LA Galaxy actually still had that trophy in their trophy case as well. So he did that. He went on with the Columbus Crew from 2006 to 2008, won an MLS Cup at the Home Depot Center in 2008. I was there at that game where the Columbus Crew beat the New York Red Bulls. So that was Sigi Schmidt. And then he left after he won that cup and went to the Seattle Sounders, where he was there for basically almost 7 years. It probably is 7 seasons. 2009 to 2016, where he was fired, obviously, we know, in the middle of the season. Brian Schmetzer came in. They got Nicholas Ladero, and the Seattle Sounders went on to win the MLS Cup. It's interesting just to sort of put those two even in any sort of perspective. I believe Sigi Schmidt was hired 1 year and 1 day after he was fired in Seattle. So we talked about Seattle having 20 points through 20 games last year, Wendy. They went on to win an MLS Cup. The LA Galaxy are 2 points better. I'm thinking Supporters Shield. Whenever you look at all, it's just sort of a weird parody, and then the fact that, of course, he's facing off against Seattle in his very first game as well. It's for the sports writer and me. It's too much for me to handle. There's too many things here that are just like.
It's almost like as with our country, when we make a change, politically, this country tends to have be very pendulous in terms of how it goes from one side of things to another. So it'll go from one extreme to another extreme. And in this case, they brought in Curt Onalfo, who they conceived of as someone who could play the kids and who was kind of a new coach, or being given free reign, and he would have all these kinds of ideas and really youthen us up. And they've corrected all the way to the other side of the extreme with his, we are going to get the most experienced MLS coach in the history of the league,
right.
Someone who's coached teams for decades and decades, who knows the ins and outs of this league implicitly. And so it's like we've gone from Curt Onalfo, which is, no real record to speak of, never won anything, focused primarily on youth, to Sigi Schmid, decades of experience, treasure chests of trophies, the most austere, experienced, wizened coach that we could possibly get, which is, I mean, it's a really interesting question of whether, given the injuries, that he can right the ship this season. I mean, we're more than half the way through.
14 games left. 14 games, 7 at home, 7 away.
Yeah, so it's a real question of what we really can accomplish, what he really can hope to achieve. I hope the transfer window is still open. I thought maybe he can get a signing or two in there and try and right the ship the best that he can. Hopefully the offseason will be active. We will bring in defensive reinforcements. We will get a real striker if Jesse is just not capable of performing or whatever has happened to him. And then 2018 will be a year when we come back really strong, which we'll have to, because LAFC is going to be playing here as well.
Yeah, one of the things I remember having, you talked about winning as coach, winning as coach in MLS history, has 254 wins. That's 20 more wins than Bruce Arena, just to sort of put in the whole sort of terms. He's also a National Soccer Hall of Fame inductee in 2015. He was MLS Coach of the Year in 1999 and 2008. He has a record 5 U.S. Open Cups, which we all know about. He actually has one of those with the LA Galaxy in 2001. And then he has 4 with the Seattle Sounders. So there's a lot of stuff here in terms of to back up what he has done and who he is. Sigi Schmidt is a real deal guy. Is he up there in age? Yeah. Was Bruce Arena up there in age? Yeah. I think Sigi joked. He goes, I saw what Bruce was doing with the U.S. men's national team, and us old coaches still have something to give. So I'm back here, and I'm gonna give it my all, type of thing. And I think he is, he's one of the names that I would have been perfectly happy with in terms of, the experience level, and the other name would have been Bob Bradley, which went over to LAFC. So between those two, you can sort of understand, yes, is it a bit of a retread? And I understand the people who are saying, we've been here before. I believe he was fired in 2004, or at least, I think he walked away in 2004 from the LA Galaxy over a philosophical difference. So, I mean, the guy has standards. I'm not gonna be upset about some of that.
I think in terms of his pedigree, no one can really, challenge his clout within MLS as like an MLS coach. This is as much of a pedigree as a person can have if you're not named Bruce Arena. That being said, I was talking to Christian, and he said, oh God, but wouldn't it be exciting if we were like, we got Tata Martino or someone like that? If we were like Orlando, if we were like these other teams that do really interesting, exciting things. And in a way, philosophically, I understand what he's saying, which is that Atlanta went out and got Barcelona's ex-coach and then just brought in the best possible players from South America, Central America. And that was stylistically what they did. So it's an interesting question of Sigi Schmidt is coming to the LA Galaxy. So can Sigi Schmidt innovate? Can he push past what he has done before? Is he going to essentially just try to be a good version of what he has been in the past? Or is he capable of, and will he push this team into new uncharted territory, which it has not heretofore scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to look at because, the LA Galaxy have been, and somebody, I saw somebody tweet this, and I laughed a little bit, and they said, I'm done with this LA Galaxy team. I want to go back to the days of Kobe Jones and Landon Donovan and David Beckham and Robbie Keane. And I'm like, oh, so basically the entire 22-year history of the LA Galaxy is what you want to go back to. It's like, you look at that and you understand sort of where they are, and it's like, well, yeah, those were unbelievable times. There were also some really bad times in between there that you didn't mention, and if you look at any sort of up and down of any team, you're gonna have these slumps up and down. Now, should the 2017 LA Galaxy be flirting with the worst LA Galaxy team ever? Because they are. There's only two seasons currently below them right now, 2006 and 2007, in terms of where they are after 20 games. So yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to see what Sigi can do, and I'm confident that the man is tactically efficient in terms of he's gonna have some fixes to some of the ridiculously continuously problems that the LA Galaxy have had in terms of defensive issues, and he even mentioned it in his press conference. We'll get to some of that here in a little bit, but just you can't give up that many goals, and you can't do things. And I have a feeling that even just tactically, he's going to immediately be somebody who is going to help. And granted, he was at training today, Wendy, on Thursday. He got to meet everybody. He doesn't even know everybody's real name, all their names yet. It's kind of funny because he'll say, yeah, I think we got a guy named Pelé. I just know him by Pelé because I haven't figured out his last name yet. I'm going to get there, but I'm just not there, everybody's names. And so you're asking him to go in basically with 2 days advance notice, to go in and face a Seattle Sounders team, which has been playing well. And so, I don't think we're going to be able to judge anything off of Saturday. But as you continue from Saturday, I still expect even this Saturday, Wendy, that there's already going to be a lift within the team because I think
morale-wise.
Yeah,
certainly.
exactly. So he said some kind of fun things, I guess, at training today. I read quotes where he said, I told the guys that I don't have a lot of rules, but they're going to have to want to win more than me because, that's what it's going to take. You're going to have to want to win. It's nothing.
Shots fired at Gio.
Yeah, and that's what Sigi is. He's like, listen, I don't have a lot of rules. You are professional athletes. You're going to have to want to win. If you want to win, I can help you. But if you don't want to win, then there's nothing I can do. So
that is a lot of subtext there, because one of the big problems that you and I talked about was the fact that Curt Onalfo did not have the gravitas, or for whatever reason, because of what the dictates that had been laid down by the FO, that he could not bench the big name players. And yes, there was that one game where he pulled out Van Dam to great effect. But the fact is that if he cannot bench Giovanni Dos Santos, and given the signing of Jonathan Dos Santos, there is a genuine question in my mind as to whether he will be able to bench either Jonathan or Giovanni Dos Santos, since they could at this point have more leverage with the team than, even the coaches. That there is a genuine question as to whether he can bench players if they just decide, I don't feel like giving it today. I just don't feel it right now.
Yeah, you know what? It's not a good day for me. I
don't feel it, man.
I was watching Gilmore Girls last night, and Rory got in some trouble, and it's just really kind of messing with my head right now. Until Lorelai gets her head straight around it, I'm not going to be the same. So I'm just going to have to take the night off. That's something that I've thought about, though, because I know we're eventually going to get to the Dos Santos signing. Wait, you think about the Gilmore Girls too?
Oh, well, of course, everyone loves the Gilmore Girls.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just glad you're also a fan, Josh.
Yes. Okay, go continue after I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I'm just one of the things, because I was thinking about how Jonathan Dos Santos is coming over for a $5.8 million transfer fee, which is much less than his market value and less money than Club America was willing to pay for him. And Club America is a much bigger, better team, although in a less lucrative market than Los Angeles, I'll give you that much. But there's a question of, why does someone who's playing well in La Liga, who's obviously a very talented player, why does his team release him for less than his contractual value? If they're, why are they not interested in trying to negotiate a better deal? And does it have anything to do with conceptions about, we're going to have so much power within the team that we'll be able to dictate decision making, or or is it literally just a question of, we're trying to start this company in Los Angeles, and we think that from a synergistic point of view, our branding and marketing will be more effective if it's two brothers in Los Angeles trying to market a soccer camp or whatever to local Los Angelinos? Is it just because Giovanni loves living in Los Angeles and he just really wants to live with his brother and have him close by? I just think I'm very happy from the perspective that Jonathan Dos Santos is clearly a step up in quality. He is a very good player. He is young. He's under the age of 30. We were at the point where we were contemplating signing a 36-year-old with an ACL tear who maybe or may not could play until January of next year. Whereas here, this is a player who is very good, talented, creative. He's a box-to-box midfielder. He can play center. He can play right. He can create. Obviously, he's going to try and work hard to play with Gio. But is there an issue with the fact that because of their father, and I'm sure you can explain the relationship that their father has to all of this, is there a threat that if one of these players starts to not commit or not want to play, that he cannot be benched or he cannot be sanctioned or disciplined because the other brother will, refuse to participate or, seek retribution or something like that? I mean, it's a lot of leverage to give to one family, especially given who their father is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're going to ask, would you question Bruce Arena about that? And I don't think any of us would ever say, hey, Bruce Arena has control of this team. We know how it goes. Bruce is going to lay down the law. It doesn't matter who you are, you're responsible. And Bruce had a way of getting things. I think you can say a lot of the same things about Sigi Schmid. I mean, I think these two are the absolute giants in Major League Soccer in terms of things. And, you go back to talking about possibly bringing in, an international coach. And I think there's lots of people who always think that. And it's always about whether or not that international coach wants to really get down and dirty with the rules of MLS and how things happen, and understand that you can't just buy your way out of things in Major League Soccer. And so a lot of times European coaches or South American coaches or coaches from outside of Major League Soccer just don't understand the intricacies of Major League Soccer. The bottom line is that, you talked about the transfer window still being open and hoping that Sigi could land, one or two more signings, and there's probably not going to be much more movement. Only because the roster is basically full and that the salary cap is probably pretty much tapped out. I mean, they did what they had always planned on doing with Jonathan Dos Santos, bringing him in, and officially, and I did get this officially confirmed, officially paying down Jelle Van Dam's designated player contract and making him a TAM player. So Jelle Van Dam is now a targeted allocation money player instead of it being a designated player, all right? So when that happened, you understand that you used up most of your TAM, or used up some TAM. We still don't know what the actual amounts available in terms of how much was used, because they're not really giving us that full picture. We know that they're using TAM. We know these things. We don't know how much is left over. We don't know how much is started with. It's like a giant algebra puzzle that you got in like high school, where it's like, Team Galaxy has X number of TAM, and this has this number of TAM, and this person requires this much TAM. How much TAM does the LA Galaxy have? And your number ends up being 3 letters and no numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit kooky, but I just think that it's interesting because Dos Santos was not a position of need that we really had. It was, and it makes me question, what was this little adventure we had with Jermaine Jones? Like, what is exactly going to happen to Jermaine Jones now that we have like a midfielder too many, and he was paid $780,000, and I don't know why. But I mean, I think from the perspective of just getting a quality player who's really, really could potentially be really, really good in MLS, who's not too old and not injured, we did that.
Yeah, no, and I think that they did, there's arguments, and I think that there's still a valid argument from people, and it's been yet to be proven, so it's one of those, it's a theory that's currently out there, is that the biggest problem with the LA Galaxy and the biggest problem with their strikers were that they weren't getting the ball in dangerous positions from a midfield that could not control the game. Jermaine Jones has been injured for so long. I don't know that you could say that. Obviously you could say his signing is a bust, and you should. I think the LA Galaxy will find a reason and a way to get rid of him here in the second half of the season. I don't know that Jermaine Jones is going to be 100% with this LA Galaxy team. I mean, hey, I'm all for it. Like, let's find a trade out there. But even I'm the first person who always says, and in fact, my favorite comment that I've made, and this is to toot my own horn, is somebody said, hey, let's trade these really bad players for this really good player, right? And I said, cool. I go, can I get $1 million for my sock? I go, because that's what you're asking for, is basically something with no value and getting something of value. There may be certain ways to move Jermaine Jones away from or off the books. Maybe he needs to retire. Maybe that's where this all comes to. So, I mean, I think that the LA Galaxy certainly are in trouble. I think that they're never going to say it, Wendy. But if people were looking for an acknowledgement that the season did not go the way that they planned, and that their plan was screwed up from the beginning, it's the fact that they fired Curt Onalfo and brought somebody in who was a direct competitor with one of their bigger offseason purchases, which is Jermaine Jones. So bringing in Jonathan Dos Santos for that. The other argument is, you said, maybe not a position of need. I think that with Jonathan Dos Santos, who is, like you said, a good box-to-box midfielder, I think that he could be one of the better midfielders in Major League Soccer in that central position. So, I mean, if you can upgrade there in the center of park, can you get guys like Gyasi Zardes to start firing? If you can put people... Because I went back and I was trying to think, we've been talking about strikers not performing, and certainly you can put Jack McBean in the not performing category. You can put Gyasi Zardes not in the performing, Jack McInerney in the not performing. I mean, anybody who has been there, anybody who has been in that striker role is not performing. But these are all guys who have had successes at different times or another. And whether that was in lower levels or upper levels, you can still say that, Jack McBean was a goal scorer at USL. Ari Lassiter was a goal scorer in USL. Yes, it's USL. It's a lower division. You would expect that there would be, but you're not even seeing these guys really get chances. And the same thing goes for Gyasi Zardes. Granted, Zardes still on his way working back and put in a good shift for the U.S. as they won the Gold Cup on Wednesday night. Had the hopeful cross that eventually found its way for the game winner.
That was not good.
Oh no!
I saw some people saying genius. I was like, no, it wasn't to anyone.
It was there was nobody there.
Wasn't to anyone.
But it worked. It worked. Celebrate like you meant it. That's fine. That's how it works. But I mean, Gyasi did look better in that tournament than he has with the LA Galaxy. So
yes,
I think
definitely.
So I think that's
Bruce
a positive.
Definitely improves him.
Yeah, so I think that's a positive there. So, I mean, there could be an argument, and until we see it, I'm not willing to say that it is, but I think that there's a good chance that Jonathan Dos Santos makes the offense better without being a complete offensive threat himself. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's a positive look. You were talking about the transfer fee. So 5 million euros translates to about $5.8 million. You talked about it being lower at one point. One point last year, Wendy, we were talking about a 20 million buyout clause on his contract from Villarreal. So it went from 20 million to about $5.8 million.
So why did it go from 20? I mean, I know 20 million wasn't the number. Obviously,
right.
It was probably something closer, like, I don't know, 10 or 12. Like, that's probably what they would have accepted. But why? Why did it drop so much?
We don't know. I mean, he had a perfectly, normal year for him with this last year with Villarreal. Villarreal went out and replaced him already. They did that before this transfer was even done. It was sort of a sign that perhaps this was going to go through. I mean, we saw that with Tigres as well, with Gignac, and thought that was going to happen. But this one, again, it sort of seemed to fall in line that they were going to continue this transfer and get it done. Here's the craziest thing. Or at least I think it's the craziest thing. This is a very good player. In a lot of ways, Jonathan Dos Santos is a better player than Giovanni Dos Santos. And I think a lot of people have said that. They play different positions. Giovanni Dos Santos scores goals. Jonathan Dos Santos is more of a quarterback, gets the assists, is strong box to box, which I'm trying to remember the last time the LA Galaxy had a real... Would you consider Marcelo Sarvas box to box?
Marcelo or Juninho. Those are the ones that I would think of.
So Juninho's more defensive and Marcelo's more offensive, but they're still kind of both box to boxes. But when they played together, Juninho would sit back and Marcelo would try to go forward. And so they were a good complement. So here with Jonathan Dos Santos, I think that you have that ability to go forward, and so you're going to want him to connect with his brother, which is going to be good on the offensive side. You're hoping that he's going to connect with Gyasi Zardes, because I now believe having another midfielder in there is Gyasi Zardes will probably be the striker of choice whenever he is available, and whether or not that's this Saturday or next Saturday as he returns from the Gold Cup and did play some minutes, like I said, in the later stages of that game. So all of these things are sort of up to bat. I think that the LA Galaxy, with this signing, do one thing that I didn't expect it to do, which is it moves the bench players to the bench and keeps them from starting, and it gets the starters, who I think the best starters outside of Jermaine Jones, on the field. And I think even when Sebastian Lletget comes back, that you still have a relatively solid starting core with like an Emmanuel Boateng coming off the bench. And I've always said that I thought Boateng was better off the bench, because if you give that kid 30 minutes at the end of the game when you need offense, that's when his speed can really cause issues at the end of the game when everybody else is tired. And if he can turn into that sub there, Wendy, I think could be amazing in the second half. So, we just sort of have to see how it goes. I think it does a lot of things, but I was going to get to his salary. Like I said, had a perfectly normal year, everything like that. Right now, it's being reported that and I believe Kevin Baxter reported the salary details, that his salary is somewhere between $2 million and $3 million. All right, so you take the $5.8 million for the transfer fee, throw that aside, and his actual salary per year is in the $2 to $3 million.
It's less than Gio.
Which is way less than Gio.
I don't get it.
Here's my second classification of the salary. Closer to 2 than it is to 3. Okay, so you're going to pay, let's say you're paying Gio, or it's Jonathan, we're going to have to do this now. It's Jonah and Gio, all right? So Jonah, you pay him $2.2 million or $2.25 million, right? And Gio's making, what, almost $6 million, 5.5 or something like that? I have the chart down at the bottom of my screen. I can actually look it up. So 5.5 in guaranteed compensation is sort of where he's at. So you're looking at Jonathan Dos Santos in the 2 to 3. Now, whether or not that's a prorated amount, and that means that it's just for this half of the season, and that's why it's that much, and it's really double that. We'll see. But right now, we're being told $2 to $3 million a year.
Boy, that's inexplicable to me that he would be earning so much less than his brother. I hope that this is a situation where either it's prorated, like you said, and that because it doesn't really make sense if he's earning dramatically less than his brother. I mean, I understand maybe that it is an issue of they just want to fully exploit the Los Angeles market through this business venture that they have. And they also realize there's enormous sponsorship and advertising opportunities for them in Los Angeles, given how lucrative the market is for Latinos, if you're a Mexican soccer fan. I mean, Los Angeles, I can't explain, to people like from a dollar perspective, the money in Los Angeles for that kind of opportunity. I hope it's that, and not the fact that there's some unspoken contingency or a contingency in their contracts with respect to like the role their father will have or something, or like that it's a 7-year contract. I mean, do we know the length of the contract?
No, not yet. We haven't heard that. I would imagine that right now, let's just start with a base of 18 months, just because usually you go for 2 years, but he's coming in half this. So could it be 18 months? Could it be 30 months? Like it's one of those, it's sort of the in-betweeners, right? Because you're going to take him up to a full year. So my guess is it's at least 18 months right now, which takes him through, I think, 2019. Let's see, all the way through 20, and then all the way 20. No, because that would be through 2018 and into 2019. It could very well be that he signed all the way through 2019. We'll find out. Eventually, that stuff will come out. It's still kind of early. The official announcement just came not too long ago.
Yeah, it seems like we got a deal, which is very strange to me because Gignac fell through. Right. We wanted Gignac, didn't get him, couldn't get him. Wanted Benedetto, couldn't get him, didn't get him. Zlatan then, and 36 years old with an ACL tear, couldn't play until January, and that deal we could not get.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to stay in Europe, by the way. That's sort of the assumption right now. The reason that the Jonathan Dos Santos deal came about is because of the Zlatan deal didn't work or didn't happen. Even though it looked like it was close at one point, it wasn't there, and it wasn't across the line, and so it didn't get done. The Jonathan Dos Santos deal pops up, it gets done. Clearly the LA Galaxy trying to show, and with the hiring of Sigi Schmid, with the landing of Jonathan Dos Santos, I mean, you're looking at this, if you want to see how it mirrors like Seattle of last year, and granted, the LA Galaxy don't need to be Seattle, but just to give ideas for people of what happened last year with Nicolas Ladero comes in, one of those guys who people were like, oh, that's cool. That's a good signing, the whole deal. And I sort of feel like the same sort of, sort of, I don't know, apathy for Jonathan Dos Santos.
Not apathy. I think that I would have been really excited for it last summer or after the last season when it made sense because we were looking for a central midfielder, and then we got Jermaine Jones, and it just doesn't really make a ton of sense because the real problem this year has been scoring goals and or our defense being terrible.
Right.
Actually, I mean, we've been bad pretty much from front to back, but I mean, that certainly has been an issue that I've been thinking about recently, which is dearth of goal scoring. And so, and by virtue of the fact that we were looking at Gignac, Benedetto, Zlatan, that we clearly wanted a striker. That was what the front office wanted, and the front office didn't get what it wanted. Well, and now we're taking a box-to-box midfielder, and he's very good, and he's very talented, and in many ways, it's a great signing. But it's just It's just odd. It's just peculiar.
Well, I think that if you wanted acknowledgement that their plan didn't work and that Jermaine Jones didn't work, this was that acknowledgement. You got it. You got, Curt Onalfo being fired. You got Sigi Schmidt coming in, and you got Jonathan Dos Santos, a guy who, again, is taking over for a guy you spent a lot of money on and time. So, I want to, and it looks like the LA Galaxy got a deal on him for whatever reason. I know it's sort of like buyer beware. You're sort of like, wait, is there something wrong with this? It's like buying off of eBay and you actually got it for like a low price instead of overbidding yourself because you had to have it. So, is that what happened with Jonathan Dos Santos in this particular case? I think he's going to be really good. I do think that the offense picks up in the second half with some of the guys that the Galaxy already have just because of him being included. And the fact that with Jonathan Dos Santos, I think that they can control the game better. I mean, we saw... And certainly people called in and talked about it in the New England game, Wendy, but there were moments where the LA Galaxy were passing very nicely. There was good movement in between. Like, we've had these moments that we've personally seen of the LA Galaxy. They've had good moments. It just seems like there's always some mess up. It's always some turnover. It's always something, and that pulls everybody out of position. It's a bad giveaway by young players who don't know what they're doing. And if you can put Jonathan Dos Santos in the middle of this offense, in the middle of this midfield, and have him control the pace and have him be sort of that guy that can protect against those errors and will be in the right place in the right time, I think they did a good job doing that. And if it comes at the expense of Jermaine Jones and it comes at the expense of knowing that they screwed up and they're going to fix things, then I think this is the right step, because for all intents and purposes, I believe Jermaine Jones's contract was only a 1-year contract. We're still trying to, there's so many things we'd love to confirm every single day that don't get confirmed and that we try to get confirmed, and, contracts are something that, historically MLS has had a tight lip in terms of how long contracts are on and all that stuff. It's starting to loosen up. We're getting more and more information, but it seems like Jermaine Jones is done at the end of this year anyway. So Jonathan Dos Santos is your guy going forward. So you got him 6 months earlier than you needed them. And if you knew you were going to need him in the January transfer window, you can't let him go if you're going to get him now.
Right.
If we're going to give the front office credit for being smart about it, then that's the way you look at it. If you want to give the front office no credit, then this was their backup plan all along. They didn't really care what the LA Galaxy needed and what's going to happen the rest of this year. And this is just sort of like, this is the other brother. We have our collection now, and they can sit on our shelf.
Well, the Galaxy have done things well in the past year. I would say Alessandrini signing, very, very good. Pedro signing, very, very good. Dos Santos could be great, provided that he and his brother both really want to win, as Sigi Schmidt said, because they obviously have the talent. I mean, between the two of them, they have more talent than, tons of teams in MLS. But, it's whether with Gio, I always feel like it's just whether he wants to deliver. Right. I don't feel like it's ever a question of whether he is capable of delivering.
And that's one of the things that I think might help. We've always talked about a happy Gio is a good Gio.
Oh, yes. Gio is like a beautiful woman.
Yes.
It's just, it involves all of this wooing, and all we have to do, make it all perfect. The music has to be right, and the lights have to be such, and we have to, buy him fantastic French wine and some smoked salmon and capers and olives. And that's really it. It's you have to woo Gio into being in that place where he feels like he wants to perform.
Yeah. And if he needs us to turn the lights off, I'm pretty sure StubHub Center can do
let's
that.
dim the lights down low.
Let's take it. Let's
do whatever has to do.
Do whatever you have to do. But anyway, so that's where it is. Jonathan Dos Santos will not be available for Saturday. Still waiting on his P1 visa, which is his player's visa as they come in, and then also his international transfer certificate. So he will not be there. Again, I told you they paid down Jelle Van Damme. That's confirmed. Here's what's not confirmed. Just sort of a little question up in the air, and we're going to eventually find out what the answer is. But it certainly is a question right now. The LA Galaxy had 8 of 8 international spots filled whenever they signed Jonathan Dos Santos. So they clearly moved somebody within that, and we don't know who that is right now. So somebody got moved. Something happened. If I was to guess, it would be Raul Mendiola is now down with LA Galaxy 2, and that somehow allows them to open up a transfer position, an international slot, and so that's how that happens. So that's sort of your open and where everything else is. All right, I wouldn't, like I said, I think that if we're looking at Jermaine Jones, Wendy, right now, and what his possible stay is with the LA Galaxy, if they can find a place to move him, even if it means they end up paying some salary. Let me give you a completely hypothetical sort of situation, because we have to start thinking about these things, because we all saw the Dom Dwyer trade that went down that, I mean, if you've been following MLS for any period of time, you know the money involved in terms of in-league money is like astronomical. This is like signing like in baseball, like signing somebody for like $250 million for 10 years, or it's probably not even that much anymore. So it shows you how long I've been watching baseball, but it's ridiculous in terms of how much it was, but it was basically ends up being $1.6 million in general allocation money and targeted allocation money, and some of that is incentive-wise. So if he scores goals and does things, then they have to pay more money. If they don't, then I think it's like the minimum there is at least $1.2 million in general allocation money and targeted allocation money. The amount of money that took from Orlando, I'm not even sure some teams have that much money, TAM money, and general allocation money together to be able to do that. I'm certainly sure that the LA Galaxy didn't have that in terms of how much they've already paid out. So Orlando was able to pull that deal off. And if you look at it, Peter Vermees, Sporting Kansas City head coach, said, listen, it's worth more to us to trade somebody in league for that type of money than it would be to sell Dom Dwyer for $3 or $4 million, or even $5 or $6 million, or $7 or $8 million outside of the league. And that's crazy.
It's peculiar. I mean, MLS is a really strange league in terms of finances. And one thing that I've been thinking about recently is when other leagues try to deal with MLS, they must encounter so many difficulties in terms of negotiations because the league collectively bargains with other teams. It gives us a great advantage from the point of view of purchasing players, but from selling players, it's actually very difficult. So, for example, when Gregor Breinberg in the Eredivisie, or Gignac in Mexico, they want to negotiate and they try to boost a player's salary. Same thing with Zlatan, by trying to play teams against one another and stuff like that. It's very difficult to do that with MLS because of the strictures imposed and how unwilling really leagues are to overspend, unwilling teams are, and the league is to overspend.
Right.
So you cannot manipulate teams in MLS the same way that you can in other leagues because they're not pitted against one another in a traditional negotiating sense. And so that's why teams, I think, are a bit flustered by the fact that they say, well, give us $20 million. And we're like, no, that's never going to happen. We're going to move on now, which I like from a perspective. I hate in negotiations that I never allow in negotiations to permit myself to be manipulated, leveraged, or held hostage in the context of negotiations. I'd much prefer if you move on. But from the point of view of selling players, MLS is really strange league, and it almost is much more beneficial for teams to sell MLS players within MLS. It's really peculiar.
Well, eventually it comes down to the cap and the amount of money that teams are allowed to gain from the sale of a particular player. So really the most that you can make, even if you sold Dom Dwyer for $7 million outside the league, the most that you can sort of have within your coffers that can apply to the salary cap is $650,000. So that's it.
So why do you sell when there's no incentive, really?
So look at the $650,000 versus what they were able to get, which is $1.6 million of salary cap relief, whether it's general allocation money or whether it is, targeted allocation money. That is salary cap relief money. That's how that works. It's used to pay down salaries below certain thresholds. That way they don't hit the cap a certain way. And so that's a huge, they doubled it, they more than doubled their buying power basically by trading him interleague than it was outside the league. And so, it makes some sense that way, but whenever you look at what the LA Galaxy could possibly do, I mean, you got to try to move Jermaine Jones. So if you can move Jermaine Jones, and here's sort of my example, and you have to look at like the NBA, and you have to look at other capped leagues in terms of what happens with trades. And so let's say, hypothetically, this is nothing here, but let's pretend for a second that the Colorado Rapids were interested in Jermaine Jones again. All right, and they said, hey, he played well for us. He was kind of a pain, but maybe we'll take him back. But here's the deal, LA Galaxy. He makes his base is $600,000. So let's use $600,000 for good, easy math ways. So let's say it's $600,000. Well, we're halfway through the season, so it's $300,000. All right, so for $300,000, LA Galaxy, guess what? We don't want to pay him $300,000 if he comes here for the second half. So we only want to pay him, let's say, $200,000. So you owe us $100,000. And so the LA Galaxy go, okay, that sounds like that might work to us. We'll pay you $100,000, and you take Jermaine Jones, and then you're going to give us back something that we want. Who knows what it is? I don't care what it is, but let's say that player is worth $200,000. Okay, so and that's a pretty good salary range for an MLS player of certain caliber, whether it's a striker or anything else. So $200,000,
Fullback.
yeah, a fullback, whatever you want to get. So $200,000. So you get that in there. Here's why Colorado might make that deal. The person they're going to give us is going to be worth approximately $200,000, but the problem is that $200,000 comes because they have 2 more years of contract involved, right? And so if you have the $200,000 and 200 more years, it's maybe worth it to get an expiring contract for Jermaine Jones for the 200. They move that other contract that maybe they didn't want as much for that next one, and that's how a deal could possibly be done. All right, we got a call actually, so let's bring this call in. Who's this?
Hi, this is Julio.
Hey, Julio, you're calling from a train, aren't you?
I just got off the train. I'm actually running to another train right now.
This is good.
I'm just calling to say that I'm excited about the change in coaching to Sigi Schmid. I think he has obviously his record speaks for itself, and I'm just hoping the Galaxy can salvage their season. Anyways, thanks for the show.
All right, thanks, Julio. Hey, travel safe. We appreciate it.
Oh, we should listen. We don't have a lot of time. We should listen to some audio. We should listen. But I do appreciate. I think that your analysis on the Jermaine Jones trade and how it might occur is dead on. I think that is the only way we would be able to unload him.
Expiring contracts. It's the wave of the future. Pay attention to the NBA. That's what they are always trading for. Dead contracts. All right.
Right. They don't want to carry over another contract that's expiring 3 years from now when you can get a contract that's expiring at the end of the year. Gives you a lot more. You can negotiate a lot more. You can look for new players. All that kind of stuff.
All right, let's go to some of the calls that we had earlier. Julio, by the way, was calling from Osaka, Japan, on a train. Just FYI.
Was he really?
He was. Hold on, we got another call too. Let's see who else is calling in. So let's see
That's
here.
So cool. Osaka.
I know it is. 213. Who's this?
This is Lindemar from Los Angeles. How you doing?
Hey, Lindemar. I was just getting ready to play your calls. If you're calling in, then I'm not going to play your calls. So this is much better, by the way. So please tell us what's going on.
Oh, I wanted to comment on Sigi Schmid coming in, but if you're going to play my call, that's great.
No.
That sounds awesome.
No. You talk now. You're live. You get to talk here. We don't need you to play your call. So what did you think about Sigi Schmid?
Well, thank you for the call, by the way. So how you doing, Wendy? How you doing? I think Sigi Schmid should have been the signing from the get-go. I think Curt Onalfo was a bad choice given his history with the Kansas City Wizards and DC United. I think he should have just stayed with the USL, with the LA Galaxy, Los Dos, if the Galaxy had some sort of like a soft spot for him. And I also think that Jonathan Dos Santos, in my opinion, was a bad decision.
Okay.
Considering their past history with their father and the Mexican team and all that. Maybe that might change now that Sigi's there, but yeah, I think if there's problems, they're going to stick together, and basically the team has to pick up their weight. And I think Sigi Schmid should look at maybe getting a goalkeeper or even working on the defensive line. I think that's where the problem is at, in my opinion. I think we have enough midfielders in the team that can do stuff, but they're more defensive minded. It's just that they got to pick up the heart, they got to pick up the weight, fight for each other. And they even should have kept Alan Gordon as a big striker. They were out for a striker, and the Galaxy should have just gone out for Zlatan, done everything, but all the losses, I'm pretty sure that took a toll, showing Zlatan what the Galaxy was about at the time. And, yeah, but I think, like I said in the past, I'm a Galaxy fan till I die, whether it's good or bad. I'm there.
Right.
Hopefully they'll do better.
Yeah, I mean that's all we can sort of hope for. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. Have a good night.
All right, there goes Lindemar. So I mean, he touched.
You
on a lot
should
of things.
explain the father thing.
Okay, so Zizinho is the father, all right, and he is a former soccer player as well, to some success. I believe actually to some great success at one point or another. But now he's really known more as the agent and father for Jonathan Dos Santos and Gio Dos Santos. So here's the thing, and this may be more of a cultural issue than it's anything else, is that he is very, very in command of his son's careers. Usually, whenever they were at Villarreal, I believe they all stayed and they all lived in the same house. And so they were all there in the same house, and that way he could control a lot of things and make sure that the boys were doing what they're supposed to do, which might be helpful, might be good. But it also feels like it's a little bit of the LeVar Ball situation, which is you have a guy in here who has threatened, and Kevin has told the story on our Monday night shows many times, who has threatened the Mexican national team with, if you're not going to call up one of my boys, then I'm not going to let the other one go as well. So, it's sort of, he's been known to throw his power around, and whenever you put both of them in the same place at the same time, then that aggregates his power. So he now has more power on the LA Galaxy because he now controls two of the designated players. And that means that, if he doesn't like somebody, then perhaps he could get them fired. There were already rumors, and people have already asked me on Twitter whether or not we think Zizinho, Gio and Jonah's dad, had anything to do with Curt Onalfo being fired. And I will say that I haven't heard anything. And I think at this point, at least coming in, I think that would be a stretch to assume anything like that. I think that you could say that the Galaxy, ultimately, Wendy, you and I both agreed, and I think most of the fans agreed, that it was time for Curt Onalfo to go. So it really shouldn't surprise people. I think it's surprising people that it happened, but it shouldn't surprise people that the trigger got pulled and things happened, at this moment. It's one of those things. The time was come. Why not next week? It could have been next week too. Why not the week before? It could have been the week before too. But
was it a contingency that Curt Onalfo be fired before Jonathan Dos Santos would agree to sign?
If you want to put on tinfoil hats, then yes, absolutely, that is a possibility.
Tinfoil hats.
I think if you're going to do this, and certainly the LA Galaxy have had histories of people coming in and taking over a team. David Beckham. Yeah, David Beckham. So there's some history to that. I think it's wise to be wary of it. I think the LA Galaxy in the front office know that they need to be wary of that. I think Sigi Schmid knows that he needs to be wary of that. I think that everybody understands, that is something. So I would say right now, in terms of how things are going, I wouldn't say that that directly affected this particular thing. But if I find out more information, I'll let you know. I just think that's right now, at least in the beginning stages, it's going to be a bit of a stretch. All right, let's get to some more stuff here. We got a lot of stuff to get to. Let's get to one call that we got. Hector from Riverside called in. Let's hear from Hector, and then we will go and get some Sigi audio, and then we'll get you ready for Seattle. So still got a little while to go here. So let's hear from Hector from Riverside.
Hey, good morning, Josh. It's Hector from Riverside. I just found out that they finally got rid of Curt Onalfo, which is great news. The only bad news is Sigi Schmidt. From what I can remember, his 5 to 6 years in Seattle, he was pretty much a mediocre coach. Didn't really do much. My philosophy in football is never repeat a coach. So we're getting a former LA Galaxy coach. I understand there was not many options right now. Also, why would you offer him a contract through December of 2018? Honestly, I think we need a smart and ambitious European or South American coach for next year. That's all I have. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, so Hector is not impressed by Sigi Schmidt. He called him a fairly average coach, Wendy.
Yeah, there's a lot of, there are some people who think definitely that Sigi is a retread. And when you see teams like Atlanta going out and getting Tata Martino and even LAFC bringing in Bob Bradley, I'm sure there is a contingency of the LA Galaxy fan base who think that LA Galaxy, hiring Sigi Schmidt is a safe choice and really not ambitious, and they want their club to be very ambitious. Everyone wants their club to be extremely ambitious. I think that they have a valid point, but from the perspective of hiring a coach mid-season who can correct and right a ship, it's hard to think of a coach who is better situated to do that than Sigi. So I do agree he's not the ambitious and or glamorous and or sexy pick. He's not the one who's not Patrick Vieira. He's not Tato Martino, but he is definitely a step up. And when you're mid-season and almost in last place in MLS, it's difficult to think of what step to take that you really think you can bank on in terms of improving things. I think that Sigi is definitely a step up.
I take some problems with your call of saying Sigi is not the sexy pick. There's a lot of There's a lot of
He reminds
Sigi.
me so much of Winnie the Pooh.
There is a
He
lot.
reminds me so much of Winnie the Pooh. I look at him and I can't help but think of Winnie the Pooh.
There is a lot of Sigi to love, and that means a lot of sexiness.
That belly. I want to rub that belly.
That's right. So, but no, here's the thing: is that whenever you look at Seattle and sort of say, hey, they're kind of mediocre, I would theorize, and tell me if I'm crazy, that if it wasn't for Bruce Arena and the LA Galaxy, that the Seattle Sounders would have more than one MLS Cup. Because I certainly think that on many occasions in the Western Conference, when the LA Galaxy got so used to knocking out the Seattle Sounders in the Western Conference, that Seattle was probably at one point the second best team in the league, and the LA Galaxy were the first. And they probably, if everything was fair, should have met an MLS Cup. But obviously, being in the same conference, that doesn't happen. I would say that, in a lot of ways, Seattle was a very good team during Sigi Schmidt's almost entire tenure there. And again, if it's not for Bruce Arena, I think Seattle has more, more than one. I think they at least have another one and maybe another one after that. So I think that if you're looking at it, and a mediocre coach is not the winningest coach in MLS history. Granted, you could also say that he's been around for a really long time, so that's how he became the winningest coach. But I mean, his overall winning percentage in Major League Soccer history, and I actually have it here if I can look it up, is something like, so he's above 500, 0.562, and you say, well, who cares, Josh? Like, above 500 isn't anything. But you have to understand the teams that he's had in some of these years, and whenever he comes over and takes over different teams and things that he has done. I mean, he came into Columbus, had 8 wins the first season, had 9 wins the second season, and then had 17 wins in 2008. He tends to make teams better, and he tends to leave them in better positions whenever he does leave. So I think calling him a mediocre coach is grossly unfair to Sigi. I think that he is one of the legends in Major League Soccer, and whether that translates to LA Galaxy's success is anybody's question, but I certainly think we're going to know whether or not it's the players or the coach here pretty quickly, Wendy. And
whether he can motivate them, get back to the locker room, improve morale, hopefully make some good tactical decisions, potentially maybe get a player or sell a player. I mean, there's a lot of, he has a long laundry list of things to do, and I mean, dealing with Gio and Jonathan's father is just one of them.
All right, so now let's get to some Sigi audio. He held a telephone call, a conference call with media reporters from national media all the way down to lowly old Josh here, corner of the Galaxy. So we were able to ask him questions. I didn't think when I woke up this morning I would be talking to Sigi Schmidt, so it was kind of fun, a whirlwind day. But I have 6 pieces of audio here we can sort of go through. We'll get to a couple of these. I think some of these are pretty interesting. But the first question sort of was asked, what do you think of everything that's happened so far in terms of how much of a whirlwind it was? And then, of course, the irony of playing against Seattle in his very first game. So let's hear from LA Galaxy new head coach, Sigi Schmidt.
Yeah, I mean, things happened very, very quickly, so it wasn't anything I anticipated for sure. So there's a lot of calendar events I've got to change, and flights I got to cancel that I was planning to go on.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's fine. This is what I want to do. The irony of playing against Seattle is certainly a unique situation that it just happens to turn out this way. But, it doesn't matter if it's Seattle or if it's someone else. We need to start collecting points.
All right, so Sigi Schmidt already. Here's the thing, right off the top, and I've heard this about Sigi. He's going to be more open than Bruce Arena was, and he's going to be more open than Curt Onalfo was. I think that you're going to find out when things are wrong. He has no problem telling you what's wrong. He also has no problems calling out players, and I think that may be one of the major things that you could sort of tick on the box in terms of Curt Onalfo, who said that he didn't want to talk about individual players or when they made mistakes or something like that. And you know what? These are professional athletes, and sometimes Bruce always called out people when they made mistakes, and the guys knew that you didn't want to be named by Bruce. And so Sigi, I don't think will have any problem with that, calling people out and saying that he needs more from people. But he's also a pretty jovial guy and seems to be pretty, forthcoming, at least with his answers from my limited time talking to him. So
he's a Bruin. To all my fellow UCLA grads out there, he is a Bruin.
Yeah, so all the USC grads are like, oh.
Oh, no.
They turned off the podcast. All right, let's go to...
oh, sorry.
It's okay. So somebody asked, what does Sigi make of this LA Galaxy team?
You watch from afar, and it's never the whole story because you don't know what's going on a day-to-day basis. So being able to be on the training field today was very enlightening for me, and certainly was a good experience. I think right now, when you look at the numbers and you look at the statistics, certainly in the last series of games, the big issue has been just goals allowed. And so, this team has offensive talent. Defensively, there's talent there as well that we need to make sure that we solidify ourselves defensively and give our offense a chance to show what it can do and produce the goals that I know it is able to produce. But that's just looking at the pure statistics and the facts of, you can't give up 3 goals a game and expect to win.
Wendy, you mentioned it a lot during this, but Sigi has been at these games. He has been at LA Galaxy 2 games. He's been at LA Galaxy senior team. So he's been paying attention to this team, perhaps knowing all along that he might be asked to rescue.
Yeah. I remember I read someone said that they had actually interviewed him in December for the job when Curt Onalfo was being hired. Isn't that true?
That is, I believe that is what has been said. I never believed that there was very much heart in it if it indeed did happen.
Right. It was maybe just sort of for the purposes of pretending like they had done a thorough search for a coach.
Yeah.
But it's true. I have seen him at almost every single home game, so I know that he has been watching. He is fully aware of what's been going on because he sits right under your press box. I mean,
Yep.
I see you at the games, and he is almost right directly beneath you.
Yeah, everybody knows he's there, and again, he's a local soccer legend type of guy. He can come to any LA Galaxy. I don't think they make him pay either. I think he can just show up. I think
I
Sigi
also
Schmidt.
see Bruce there a lot too. So I mean, it's like there's lots of the StubHub Center is a very popular hangout for soccer people in the United States.
Well, Bruce's office is still in StubHub, so it makes sense that he walks up every once in a while to take a look, and that means he can keep his eye.
He and Ziggy are gonna high five each other.
That's in the hallway, I'm sure. They're gonna belly bump as they go by. That's what.
Belly bump.
That's perfect. All right, let's go to because I'm somewhat egotistical. Let's go to my question that I asked Sigi Schmidt, and I actually left me in this because I normally cut other reporters out, but like I said, egotistical to the core. So here I am talking to Sigi Schmidt.
Welcome back, Sigi. 2 questions, really. One, you said that this all happened very quickly. I wanted to know what that time frame was in terms of when you first started talking to Chris and the Galaxy and how quickly that turned around. And also, what do you think is the most important part of you coming in? What's the first thing you do whenever you entered the club? Did you talk to the players, and what did you say to the players if that was the case?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the process was a 48-hour, to maybe 72-hour process. It wasn't a very long process at all. It didn't take me long to think about it, per se either, because this is a club that's always been dear to my heart, and so coming back is certainly a great situation. In terms of, how you approach a team or what you're going to say for the team on the first day, it's a matter right now of just getting to know the players, for one, and getting them to know me. Establishing our trust in each other and our relationship, and for them to understand the passion that I have. Where you start on the field is really, for me, always has been about what the needs are. It's not about, okay, we're going to start with defense first or attack first or midfield play. It's about, what do I see as the needs, and so that's where we're starting, is at those needs. But, I also want to make sure that players we're excited and we're aware of the challenge that is ahead, and that should get them excited because challenges are exciting.
All right, there we go. Head coach Sigi Schmidt. So what did you think of that, Wendy?
Well, I thought your question was wonderful, Josh. Very good job.
I was gonna say I didn't really care about Sigi's response. I just wanted to know.
You want to hear yourself as a reporter, right?
That was it. That was fun. That was my thing. By the way, I was doing that at my office, and my boss, who's / my dad, comes in and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm talking to Sigi Schmidt. Calm down. Calm down."
See, this actually lends credence to my conspiracy theory, though. 48 hours to 72 hours. And we knew at the same time that Jonathan Dos Santos was in the wings waiting to come in, and yet he hadn't been announced. So what was the thing that needed to occur before Jonathan Dos Santos would sign on the dotted line? And this is the conspiracy theory is starting to emerge in a more fulsome light.
What we want to see here at Corner of the Galaxy is you in your tinfoil hats. So please send us pictures. At Galaxy Podcast on Instagram, please. We want to see tinfoil hats, your Sigi tinfoil hats. If you can possibly mold Sigi out of tinfoil, I'd really appreciate that. Let's see. I got one more thing. Let's go to the last one. He talks about defensive issues and some of the things. So here's Sigi on the LA Galaxy's defensive issues.
Well, obviously, there's been some injuries on defense. Daniel Stairs missed quite a few games. David Romney right now has a little bit of a knock. There was a signing of the new right back, Pele. I just know him as Pele. I'm trying to learn all the names in detail. But there's certainly aspects to it there. I think it's more than personnel. It's a question of how we're defending, and so we need to alter a little bit how we're defending to fully take advantage of the skill sets of the players that we have back there. And I think at times, the team defended in a way that made it difficult for those guys. So, that's one of the objectives that we've set in the near term.
All right, so there we go. There's your sort of Sigi update there, Wendy. What again? First impressions of Sigi answering questions about the LA Galaxy. What do you think?
I think that he seems to have a very clear idea of what he wants to do, which is good. I mean, I think this is someone who's got a lot of experience. I don't think anyone is going to think that he, won't know what he wants to do. He won't have a plan of attack. I think with the defensive issues, there's a litany of problems. One has been injuries, obviously, with Rowe. Diop has been injured. One has been some psychological challenges with Diop obviously losing confidence. One has been discipline. Van Dam has had discipline problems. Obviously, the naivety of our right back situation with alternating between Nathan Smith and Diallo, neither of whom I have much confidence in. I mean, there's obviously Stairs being out has been terrible. So shoring up the back line is something that we have got to do, because he's right. I mean, you cannot concede three goals a game and hope to have a prayer of having a successful record in MLS. But I think that if he can enforce discipline within the team, if the young players will look up to him because they're young MLS players and they know who Sigi Schmidt is, he has to get a hold of the older players. The older players who don't know who he is. Ashley Cole doesn't know who he is, but Ashley Cole is a very professional player. Van Dam is someone he's going to have to figure out how to deal with that personality and how to impose discipline on Van Dam and get him to do what he wants him to do. I don't know if you can do anything about Jermaine Jones. I'm not sure what to do about that.
No.
And then obviously with Gio and Jonathan, the big names, the big money, he's going to have to figure out how do you deal with players who have potentially a lot of complexities in terms of managing high-priced talent, and particularly high-priced talent that is, that has moods about what it wants and when it wants it or what it wants to do. But I think he's up to the task because he has a lot more maturity than someone like Curt Onalfo. And I also think, frankly, that it's good that we hired a coach who is not best friends with the general manager and the chief of operations, because the hiring of Curt Onalfo to me always did feel like the ultimate frat brother move. That Pete Vagenas and Chris Klein and Curt Onalfo are all very close with each other. I frankly prefer the idea of someone who is an independent mind outside of whatever they had going on and who is going to impose his own view of the team and his own opinions and who has a voice to be reckoned with.
Right.
Because I don't really like the idea of the team being governed by three guys who all sort of have the same viewpoint, and none of whom, frankly, strike me as being all that bright or experienced.
No, I mean, it certainly is that you now have a voice who can go against those other voices. So I think Sigi Schmidt is here. Let's clean up some details on this. The rest of Curt Onalfo's coaching staff, goalkeeper coach Daniel Gonzalez and assistant coach Rob Becerra, they're both going to remain right now on the first team bench with Sigi Schmidt, a guy who will be joining Sigi Schmidt on the bench for this particular game on Saturday, at least for that, will be Jovan Karofsky. So Galaxy technical director will sit on the bench, at least for Saturday's game, to give Sigi a little more insight into some certain things. So you'll see Jovan down on the bench there. The other sort of housekeeping is that Ante Rossoff, who was Curt Onalfo's assistant coach there, will move to a different role within the organization when quizzed on what that role would be within the LA Galaxy right now. Curt Onalfo said that they weren't sure what that was going to be, but they were confident that he was a good guy, that was a very knowledgeable guy, and they want to keep him within the organization. So some people have theorized perhaps some time with LA Galaxy too, helping Mike Munoz, maybe with the LA Galaxy Academy as well. So Ante Razov is a good soccer mind. Lots of people have sort of talked about him as a possible replacement at one time or another for Curt Onalfo, because he does have aspirations of, I believe, coaching in Major League Soccer. So it looks like they're going to hold on to him, but what he's doing right now, we don't know. So those are sort of the little sort of housekeeping stuff that we have in there. We do not know how long Sigi Schmidt's contract is right now. It is being reported, or at least some people have been talking, and from a very good source has told me that basically it's going to be through this December. Now, whether or not the LA Galaxy have the option of extending, or whether Sigi Schmidt has the option of extending, I think that's something that we're going to have to find out. But basically, he's through October of this year, whenever the LA Galaxy, ultimately end this season. He's there through that, and then they're going to reevaluate. So if he does a good job down the stretch, I don't think anybody's going to hold anybody to sort of staying, which could mean that, come this offseason again, Wendy, the LA Galaxy are hunting for a head coach again, which would be kind of a nightmare. So I really hope it's Sigi Schmidt's option.
When will our nightmare be over?
Yeah, it'll be, hey, it won't be boring, that's for sure. I know that. But so whenever that happens, we'll see how that happens and everything goes down. We'll find out more details and everything else. All those
years of people complaining about how boring Bruce Arena is. What would you give for the boredom of a Bruce Arena team right now? This year has not been boring. This is what it's like when it's not boring. It's like madness.
I'm sure there's some people who I loved Bruce, covering Bruce, because he's always interesting, and I love how people said he's boring, because he was just he's crazy smart and he's crazy sharp, and it was just fun to cover him all the time because he kept you on your toes. I think Siggy's going to be a lot of that too. I really see some of that. Let's quickly give everybody the details on the information on the game coming up on Saturday, because there are a couple little highlights we need to touch. Saturday, July 29th, 7 p.m. kickoff time, the Seattle Sounders coming to StubHub Center. This game will be broadcast live on ESPN. So check ESPN, ESPN2 if it's not there. These things always change, like last minute. It says ESPN, and then it'll end up showing on ESPN2. Just keep an eye out. It's one or the other. So Saturday, July 29th, 7 p.m. kickoff time right now, which is earlier than the 7:30 p.m. kickoff time. It normally is on Saturday, so keep that in your mind. The LA Galaxy do have a player suspended in this game. The LA Galaxy striker Jack McBean was suspended for a 43rd minute foul on a New England player. It was a foul that was seen by the referees and given a yellow card. The disciplinary committee then went back and looked at video they shared with everybody, and determined that Jack McBean should be suspended for a game and fined an undisclosed amount. So Jack McBean will not be there. I will say this, if you watch the video shows absolutely no contact whatsoever, because Jack's head gets in the way of if there was going to be contact. So if the disciplinary committee used that video to determine that Jack McBean should be suspended, those people should all be looking for jobs. I have no doubt that he made contact. I have no doubt that he probably deserved to be suspended. But the guys who actually saw it, Wendy, were on the field and gave him a yellow card. And if they use that video, which if you go on cornerofthegalaxy.com, you click on the link in the story about Jack McBean, so you can watch it. There is zero, you can't see the contact. I've sent it to a bunch of people. I go, what'd you see? They're like, oh, well, you see the contact with Jack McBean. I go, did you see the contact? Well, no, it happened behind his head. I go, so you really don't know whether or not he hit him or didn't hit him, or he could have flopped, or everything really could have happened, right? And they're like, yeah, that's true. You can't actually tell what happened. So anyway, just more disciplinary committee fun. And that's one, Wendy, that may be sort of highlighted in the video assistant referee technology that's coming to Major League Soccer starting on, I believe, August 4th or August 5th. So that's just around the corner, so just keep an eye on that. But no Jack McBean there. Joao Pedro will be back. Yel Van Dam still on yellow card watch. The LA Galaxy should have Giassi Zardes at least back. I don't know if he'll be available, as we've talked. Seattle Sounders, Jordan Morris and Clint Dempsey might be available, might not be available. They were all Gold Cup players in this last Gold Cup, so we'll see sort of how that goes. Seattle comes in, Wendy, on a 3 win streak as they enter StubHub Center. The LA Galaxy, of course, trying to avoid a 6-game losing streak, which would tie them, I believe, for 2007 they had a 6-game losing streak, and then in 2006 they had a 7-game losing streak. So that's sort of where we're at right now. So yeah, it's a lot of things going on with the LA Galaxy. I mean, that's sort of your preview.
I just want us to stop being really embarrassing. I want to win at home. I miss winning at home.
I think Sigi can bring that. I don't know if it's against Seattle this Saturday. I mean, I want to see it. What I'm really waiting for is on Twitter is that whenever Sigi loses this game, that people are like, yeah, Sigi out. Sigi out. I want to.
I think this Saturday is too soon for running to see it noticeably. I hope that we do, but it's obviously too soon to expect. But I hope that as we move forward, we just right the ship enough so that I just stop feeling bad. You know, I want to go to games and just not feel bad when I leave. That's what I want. I want us to not be embarrassing.
When you go to a game on the weekend, you don't want to be depressed for the rest of the weekend, right?
Right. I mean, it's sad. Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah, it is. Whenever you go, you're all excited about going to a game, and I don't know, I still get this way, and I'm not even a fan anymore. I go and I love being in the press box, and I love writing stories about the Galaxy, and I love covering the team. So I get really excited about it. So, I mean, I would hope that all of you get as excited as I do, and I hope that when you leave, you're not dreading writing, 1,000 words to cover the LA Galaxy and the embarrassing loss that they just had. I hope that you're leaving with excitement saying, hey, there we go. We saw a win at home. What do you know?
We saw something. We saw something interesting. We saw the team looked different. The morale seemed different. We put up, just something. We put up a fight, just something where I can look at it and say, oh, things are different.
Oh yeah, and perhaps you will see that. We'll never know. It's been 114 days. Whenever the LA Galaxy walk onto the field at StubHub Center, have been 114 days since the last time they won a home game at StubHub Center. 114 days. Use that as a trivia question for all your friends. So would they buy you alcoholic beverages of your choices, or water, or even water costs like $1 million at StubHub Center. So it's worth it if you can trick your friends into doing it. 114 days is what the LA Galaxy have spanned between wins at StubHub Center. So.
You don't think of yourself as being an LA Galaxy fan anymore?
No, I stopped that probably about 2 years ago, which is fine with me.
But then why do you commit so much of your life to doing something if you don't love them?
Because I love doing what I do, which is covering the team and getting information to fans and making sure that the people who listen to the show are the most informed people. That's what I love doing. That's my motivation. I think if I was motivated by this team right now, Wendy, I probably wouldn't want to do podcasting anymore, because the team has been horrible, and that allows me to be excited for every single game day, because I think that there's interesting things revealed every time the LA Galaxy play, even if they lose. I
don't know. You put so much into this. It just seems like if you didn't love the team, that there would be no. I mean, how could you motivate yourself to do this?
I have certainly loved the team in the past, which has given me the experience to understand that what I do now is really interesting. I love going to the locker room. I love getting to know the players. I love getting to know the coaches. And I love trying to take that information of what I see and what I concentrate on and trying to give that to people. So that way you guys can have a greater understanding of what the LA Galaxy are. Because I don't want you to just think, first of all, I want you to understand these people are real. They're real people. They're real guys. They're really trying things. And when they say something interesting, I want to tell you about it. I want to write about it. And when they do something interesting, I want to write about it and tell you about it and all those things. So, I mean, that's the important. Today was like ridiculously exciting for me because there was all this news and I was writing stories like crazy and updating things and publishing things. And I knew that eventually tonight I would get to talk about this team for maybe 90 minutes. And we would get to talk about all these things that have happened with the team and how I think that the fans should probably be pretty excited about the turn of events that have happened. I don't know if it's going to fix everything, but at the same time, stuff has happened. So that's my motivation. Everybody loves certain things in certain ways. Everybody has their own hobbies, and this is my hobby. This is what I enjoy doing. So I think
little insight there, folks, into the mind of Josh Guesman.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get paid for this. You know that.
I know.
Yeah. So
I'm going to demand next season a doubling of my $0 salary.
We're gonna have to. So we'll negotiate. We'll do maybe
tough.
Yeah.
I'm a tough negunegator.
That's what I've heard. Yes. All right. So anything else, Wendy? You good? We've covered it all.
I am good. We've covered.
All right. Curt Onalfo fired. Let's recap. Curt Onalfo fired. Sigi Schmid hired. Jonathan Dos Santos, third designated player. And
Bob
Bradley hired as LAFC coach, so that now starts to fire things up. The timing, the announcement, all that fun stuff, that's good. And then I'll leave you on this particular, not a bombshell, just a hint, and it may not even happen. But the LA Galaxy might not be done in this transfer window. And we're going to see what that ends up being, whether that ends up being an incoming player or an outgoing player. So keep your eyes for that. I will certainly bring you any information that I have that is reportable on cornerofthegalaxy.com. So watch this space, as they say. Things are not done. I don't believe they are. It could be a quiet rest of the transfer window, but I believe that there is still some hope in there for things to either move out or for people to move in. And that's all I'm going to say right now. All right, Wendy, we good?
Yes.
Tell people where they can find you. We'll get on out of here.
You can find me at cornerofthegalaxy.com and American Soccer Now and on Twitter at BardsBlonde.
All right, and if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN. And of course, please head on over to Corner of the Galaxy. That's where I do all of my writing, all of my interesting takes on the team. That's where you can find me. cornerofthegalaxy.com, at Galaxy Podcast on Twitter, all those fun things. LA Galaxy have a game coming up on Saturday. I hope to see you all out at StubHub Center. The Sigi Schmidt era returns. Jonathan Dos Santos soon to play on the field, not this weekend, but next weekend. Maybe a Pele Van Aanholt sighting this particular weekend. Lots of things coming up for the LA Galaxy. For Miss Wendy Thomas, I thank you all for listening to us on this Thursday night. Hope you have a safe night. I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. And for all of your independent LA Galaxy news, discussion, and entertainment, including this podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. Fans, thanks for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.